Following the ideas we learned on lesson 3.2, we can now move on to multi-step linear equations, which, as the name says, is when we need many different steps to solve for the variable in the equation. Let's look at the equation we have on the board, on the screen. The goal is still the same. We're trying to isolate that x, which currently is not isolated because we have a 2, we have a -7, and we have another 2 outside of the parentheses. In these situations, when having parentheses, we need to start by eliminating the parentheses. We cannot solve for x, meanwhile there are parentheses in the equation. And to eliminate that parenthesis, we're going to apply the distributive property we learned on lesson 2.4. That's unit 2, lesson 4, unit 2 of this Algebra I course. And the distributive property means we take that 2 outside of the parentheses and we multiply times everything inside of the parentheses, starting by the 2x. So 2 times 2x, let's just write it like that for the moment. And then 2 times -7. Let's just write it as 2 times 7 for the moment. And the negative, very important, we carry it with us. So we put the negative on front. And this is still equal to 10. Then we need to do the operations. Let's simplify this equation. We multiply numbers with numbers and variables with variables. So 2 times 2x is 4x, and 2 times 7 is 14. So we can write this as 4x minus 14 equals 10. And now this equation no longer has a parenthesis, and we can solve. This is now very similar to the two-steps equations we were solving on lesson 3.2. We still have the x. We still need to isolate it, but we no longer have parentheses. We now need to take care of the 4, the -14. But as we learned on lesson 3.2, we start with the addition and subtraction in with this type of equations. We do the inverse operation. And what is the inverse operation of a subtraction? It's an addition. So we do a +14. That way the +14 cancels. But if we do it on one side, we also have to do +14 on the right side of the equation. It's the golden rule of algebra. Then we do 10 plus 14, we get 24. We can clean the board one more time. And we have one final step because there is our x. But there is only one number left to fully isolate it, which is the 4. Now as it turns to the multiplication or divisions, what is the inverse operation of a multiplication? This is a 4x, 4 times x. The inverse operation of a multiplication is a division. So we divide by 4 both sides. By dividing by 4, we also get 24 divided by 4. And this operation, we get it from the division table, so we could use a calculator, x equals 6. Our x is finally fully isolated. There are no other numbers next to the x. So x equals 6. The x is fully isolated. That's our final answer. That's how we know when we stop. When the x is fully isolated. X equals 6 in this problem. But there is a second method we can use to isolate the variable on this problem. I mean, we're in the same situation. It's exactly the same problem. We have the x, and we need to isolate it from the 2, the -7, and the 2 outside of the parentheses. And yes, we still need to start by eliminating the parentheses. We need to start with that parenthesis. We cannot solve for x while there are parentheses. But not necessarily we have to apply the distributive property as we learned on the first part of this video. Because that 2 outside of the parentheses is multiplying the parentheses. That's 2 times parentheses 2x minus 7. So we can apply the inverse operation. The opposite of a multiplication is a division, meaning we can divide by 2 to cancel the 2's. But if we do it on one side, well, we have to do it on the other. So 10 divided by 2, and we just do 10 divided by 2, which is the operation. 10 divided by 2 equals 5. Now we have 2x minus 7 equals 5, which is a two-step equation, like the ones we solved on lesson 3.2. We're solving for x. We need to take care of the 2 and the -7 in two-steps equations. What do we start with? The additions or subtractions. We must do the inverse operation. And what is the inverse operation of a -7? You can pause the video here and think for a while. Meanwhile, we give the solution. Because the inverse operation of a -7, well, it's a subtraction, we need to put a positive 7. That way they can cancel. One more time. If we do it on one side, we also have to do positive 7 on the other side. Then 5 plus 7 is 12. Let's clean up the board one more time. We have 2x equals 12. We're solving for that x. It is still not fully isolated because of that 2. But we can finally move on to the multiplication division. That 2 is multiplying the x. That's a multiplication. So we must do the inverse operation. And the opposite of a multiplication, one more time, is a division. So we divide by 2. That way we can cancel. And after we cancel the 2's, if we do it on one side, we also have to divide it by 2 the other side. 12 divided by 2 equals 6. The x is fully isolated, so the answer is 6. X equals 6. As you can see, regardless of the process we do, regardless whether we do the distributive property or if we divide it by the 2 multiplying outside of the parentheses, we still get to the same solution. The important thing is we follow the order. First eliminate the parentheses, then take care of the addition subtraction, and finally take care of the multiplication division.